Hello, everyone, and welcome to our 71st episode of In the Trenches, Crawl's weekly cyber threat intelligence briefing. Today is the 7th of October, and my name is George Glass, an Associate Managing Director in the Cyber Threat Intelligence team. Joining me today from the CTI team are Ryan Hicks, Dave Truman, and Sarah Becker. As always, we'll be covering the most recent trends that our threat intelligence team is witnessing in the trenches. So let's get into this week's situation report. First up, Radamanthus Stealer version 0.7 adds a new AI-enabled feature. A new version of Radamanthus has been released and is available for sale on dark web forums. This recent version introduces an AI-based optical character recognition feature to the Stealer. OCR, or optical character recognition, is the conversion of text found in images into machine-encoded text. This new feature allows Radamanthus Stealer to detect and capture cryptocurrency wallet seed phrases stored as images. That's a very common way of storing things, especially in password managers. These seed wallet phrases allow bad actors to access or take control of a victim's cryptocurrency wallet. Other malware such as Spy Agent and ViperSoft X have also been using OCR to steal information. Really interesting development there. Next up, China-linked Salt Typhoon attacks targeted US internet providers. It is being reported that China-linked threat actors have breached internet service providers in the US. Investigators have determined that the goal of the attack, dubbed Salt Typhoon, was to establish footholds for espionage. Cisco is currently investigating whether Cisco routers were used as part of the attack and have found no evidence so far. Microsoft is also investigating the intrusion and assessed which sensitive information may have been accessed. Really important one to keep top of mind there, especially as we get into the last stages of the US election season. Finally, NVIDIA Container Toolkit vulnerability leaves AI applications open to attackers. Researchers at Wiz have discovered a vulnerability in NVIDIA Container Toolkit that allows attackers to escape container and launch attacks directly on the host file system. The vulnerability, CVE 2024-0312, was given a critical rating by NVIDIA. The toolkit is commonly used in containerized AI applications with access to GPU resources. That's most AI applications, let's be honest. An analysis of 100,000 public cloud environments shows that 33% of the toolkits are at risk of an attack. Organizations are encouraged to update to Container Toolkit version 1.16.2 and NVIDIA GPU Operator version 24.6.2 for GPU-enabled Kubernetes environments. Remember, if you have any comments or questions, please get in touch with us using cti@kroll.com. That's cti@kroll.com. So let's get into today's briefing. Today, we're going to cover the following trends our team is concentrating on. I'm going to cover for Mukesh today and give you some news on a vulnerability actors are using to exfiltrate NTLM hashes. Then I'm going to talk about SLIVER in the malware spotlight. Then it's over to Ryan, who's covering a More Eggs campaign. Then Dave will discuss a new report from Microsoft in which threat actors pivot from on-prem to cloud. And of course, we will finish with a ransomware roundup from Sarah. Now, let's talk about this vulnerability. CVE 2024-38200 was patched in the August patch Tuesday. My apologies. It's got a CVSS score of 7.5 and allows attackers to capture NTLM v2 hashes using a specific Office URI scheme, leading to potential credential theft and privilege escalation if those hashes are cracked. It affects various Microsoft Office versions and can be exploited through HTTP or SMB protocols. It's important to note that we at Crawl, we've seen a lot of increase in NTLM-based hash theft attacks, as well as an uptick in malware delivery over SMB connections. You can see there on the screen, the vulnerability can be triggered by sending a crafted HTML file with an Office URI scheme embedded in it. There it is there, the MS Word : is the URI scheme. And that essentially allows an attacker to cause an authentication to a remote NTLM server and steal those hashes. Apart from patching, some ideas here for hardening. restricting NTLM outbound traffic, configuring GPO correctly so that only trusted sites and domains are listed in the intranet zone, and unselect the include all local sites not listed in other zones option. That's a really easy one to do. And enable LDAP channel binding and LDAP channel signing. That mitigates a lot of the NTLM relay attacks and secures LDAP communications, but is a little bit more of an involved process and requires quite some work on that one. Of course, there's more detail in the report, so I highly encourage you to go and read that if you're interested in that vulnerability. Next up, let's talk about SLIVER. So the CTI team have been investigating SLIVER over the last couple of weeks. Well, we have been previous to that, but we've been using this for a more detailed write-up. There's a lot of information in the report if you care to read it, but this is going to be sort of a summary of what we found. So what is SLIVER? SLIVER is a command and control and pen testing or adversary emulation framework. It's freely available, open source, and it was written in Go by Bishop Fox. It was first released into beta in 2019 and is now at version 1.5, with 1.6 being in beta. It's one of the growing numbers of public open source adversary emulation frameworks along the lines of things like Brute Batel and things like that. Some require payment, some are freely available. This one is freely available on GitHub. We see it quite often, as last seen in the wild, of course, just last month. I'm sure if we went and looked through our data, it would be here in October as well. It's used by a large number of attackers, including advanced persistent threat groups, because it essentially hides their toolkit because they're using an open source tool. Names such as APT29, TA551, Kimsuki, North Korean threat group, Scattered Spider, and Exotic Lily are all known to use the tool. It can be used by advanced and more novice operators alike. Some notes on the execution. SLIVER implant names, as they're generated procedurally, they are generated as an adjective_noun.exe. We note that many of the less sophisticated operators don't even bother to change the name, and so it's very easy to see those implants being dropped on devices. One of its main tool sets and ways of execution is injecting into processes, and we tested this quite a lot. So here's an example. That's just me migrating into the widgets.exe process that you can see there. My implant name was Victorious Chain, and you can see the implant executing there in that widgets.exe process. This is what the telemetry looks like on an EDR platform. This one is Sentinel-1. But what we should note is that a lot of the design of SLIVER is for defense evasion, and these are very, very noisy. Injection processes can be very, very noisy in the console, so it can be hard to directly use these for a detection standpoint, but it's a very good method for threat hunting, for example. Moving on, SLIVER comes with a suite of plugins and tools, which it refers to as the Armory. It's also compatible with a number of very prominent and I'm sure very recognizable pen testing or administration tools such as PSXEC, Mimikatz, Rubius, SharpHound. It also has built-in key logging and clipboard monitoring capability and the capability to capture screenshots of the target. Those are very expandable and can be expanded by the operator themselves. And there's a host of open source tools that are compatible with the tool as well. That means credential access is really very easy. One of the ones from the Armory that really stuck out to me, if you're a less sophisticated actor and you think you're maybe on maybe a soft target, is you can simply ask the user for their credentials. So this is one of the ones that I prepared earlier. As you can see, I just asked for the user's credentials and they dutifully put those in there. One of the things you may notice here is it's got Windows widgets because that's the process that I had injected into. But to a user, but basically your screen is locked until you put your password in, or you keep canceling those things. If I was a less scrupulous attacker, I just keep firing those until I got a password out of that particular user. So it can be as simple as that, or it can be as easy as taking a screenshot and seeing the password on my notepad there. All of those different things are available to the operator. Of course, this is a command and control framework. It's highly configurable. We don't really have enough time to go through it all today, but there's a lot of detail on it in the report. C2 connections can be done over HTTP, DNS, MTLS. It's also compatible with SOCKS 5 proxies and WireGuard endpoints as well, but very, very configurable. Some notes on detection and mitigation. As we said, the naming convention by default is highly noticeable. And again, by default, it drop payloads directly into the Windows temp directory. Again, that's a really good place for threat hunting and detection opportunities. I mentioned briefly how some EDR technologies may be able to detect some of those remote process create events, those memory injects. That's a good opportunity for threat hunting there as well. And there is, of course, also the network detection opportunity to catch those beacons connecting to C2. At Kroll, we do a lot of scanning to identify SLIVER C2 on the open internet. Of course, they can be hidden very easily, but IOC indicators can work here very, very well as well. And with that, that's all from me. I will pass over now to Ryan to talk about more eggs. Over to you, Ryan.
Thanks, George. Hi, everyone. So, a campaign has been observed by the Kroll SOC, whereby a threat actor has posed as a job applicant to target recruiters on LinkedIn to deliver the more eggs backdoor. So, while engaging with the applicant, the victim was socially engineered to browse to a malicious domain, which aligned with the name of the fake applicant. The website itself was designed to look as though it hosted the applicant's CV. However, it actually downloaded a zip file, which in turn contained an LNK shortcut file. Both were named again after the fake applicant's name. A full list of the tasks that the LNK does is in our report. However, just one thing to highlight here. So it copies the legitimate IE4U init.exe to a local direct temp directory and executes it using a customized config file. And this file is legitimately used as a configuration part of Internet Explorer and is known as is a known living off the land binary used by actors. The resultant execution of that file causes a download of a malicious DLL, and that establishes persistence via the current user environment registry key, and that launches a login script. So as part of post-compromise activity, a number of discovery commands were run, including listing trusted domains and domain admins. Again, a full list of those. You can see the actual commands are in our report. And the output of those, or some of those commands, were saved to text files, which were then being sent to C2 server by HTTPS post requests. So overall, the campaign heavily aligns with activity previously attributed in open source to KTA032, also known as Fin6. The group have previously used LinkedIn to deliver more eggs. However, previously they were observed on the recruiting side, so they were trying to lure applicants. This new technique in reverse, if you like, is much more targeted approach by the group, as by going after the recruiters themselves, they can be a lot more selective on their targets. As they're already able to understand where the recruiters work. Maybe they've done some reconnaissance on the company, particularly around the information shared on LinkedIn. So recommendations wise, there were a number of detection opportunities for the activity. In our campaign, the multiple crawl detection engineering detections were triggered to identify kind of a number of activities along the attack chain. I've listed a few in the report. These include kind of suspicious processes in LNK files, WMI execution, and that kind of persistence login scripts. And lastly, the big recommendation for organizations really is education for recruiters on the threat of engaging with applicants on LinkedIn, and really just maintaining caution when clicking on unknown URLs and opening unknown files from applicants when kind of doing that kind of engagement. That's all for me. I'll hand back to you, George.
Thank you very much, Ryan. And now over to Dave for a on-prem to cloud pivot. Over to you, Dave.
Thank you. Microsoft released a report that KTA 370, aka Storm 0501, are targeting hybrid cloud environments. The attacks targeted multiple industry verticals in the United States, including transportation, manufacturing, government, and law enforcement. The group first compromises on-premises environment before using it to pivot to the cloud in components. KTA 370 often obtains initial foothold either through purchasing from an initial access broker or attacking known vulnerabilities. In these campaigns, Microsoft detailed the vulnerabilities Zoho Managed Engine, Citrix NetScaler, and Cold Fusion as being used. KTA 370 performs an extensive discovery cycle using Windows inbuilt tools such as NetExe, NLTest.exe, SystemInfo.exe, and TaskList.exe, alongside open source tools such as OS Query and AD Recon. They use legitimate remote access tools such as Level.io, AnyDesk, and NinjaOne to interact with compromised hosts, and they used a renamed version of rclone for data exfiltration. Once the actor obtained access to the environment, they used tools such as IMPacket's secrets dump module to obtain credentials. KTA 370 utilized any credentials found to further find credentials and move across the network and amass a larger set. KTA 370 also looted sensitive files such as KeyPass secrets, and alongside leaving indications that brute forcing of certain accounts may have also taken place. Once they obtained domain administrator, they used this access to deploy embargo ransomware across the estate. Microsoft believe it likely that the compromised credentials gathered were also used to access the cloud environment, allowing for the theft of data. And as a means of a backdoor access to the cloud environment, KTA 370 added their own domain with federated access to the cloud environment. The details of the compromise seem to indicate a lack of security hygiene within the victim environment. As such, it is an important reminder to maintain a good security posture, including patching, vulnerability management, educating user on credentials, and a good EDR solution. Thank you, George.
Thank you very much, Dave. And now, last but not least, over to Sarah for the Ransomware Roundup. Over to you.
Thanks, George. So October 1st, National Crime Agency, along with other law enforcement agencies such as Europol and the Department of Justice, they released more details regarding the ransomware group Lockbit via their seized data leak site. And this is kind of a continuation of the Operations Kronos that occurred back in February of this year when law enforcement initially seized Lockbit's data leak site and released further information, kind of playing off of how Lockbit publishes victim organization data. So within some of these news sections that kind of highlight further information that law enforcement has gathered, we have identifications of members of Evil Corps. There's different things of what law enforcement might have learned during this operation. They release information about arrests of major threat actors that are behind Lockbit, any other kind of arrests, and details about infrastructure monitored and disrupted. So with all of this data, law enforcement has been able to make significant arrests linked to the ransomware group. This operation, as stated before, is part of the Operation Kronos that initially occurred in February, and it has revealed that there are connections between Lockbit and the Russian threat actor group Evil Corps. The UK has sanctioned actually 16 members of Evil Corps from this investigation, and this is exposing just their involvement with Lockbit. Authorities were also able to seize numerous websites and servers used by Lockbit. So this is again in an attempt to just disrupt operations with the ransomware group. And as of today, the data leak site is still up and it should be closing according to law enforcement's timer in approximately 8 hours. So that is what we have so far on this new news.
Thank you very much, Sarah. Really good to see more law enforcement activity. And thank you to Ryan and Dave for also presenting today. But that's all we have time for this week. Remember, if you have any questions or comments, please do reach out to us using cti@kroll.com. That's cti@kroll.com. Have a wonderful day.